The last days of Earth's governments. Who will Christ fight when he returns? Welcome, everyone. Today we're going to talk about a very timely topic, although we'll mainly focus on prophecies. Prophecies we've discussed before. I'll try to present this topic as simply as possible, because as you've probably noticed, biblical prophecies are scattered. Some are found in Book of Daniel, some in other books, and others in Revelation. Sometimes there are fingers, elsewhere horns, at other times kings. A lot of people don't realize that often these are the same things shown in different images. Today, my goal is to help you understand the verses that speak about the group of people who will be in power just before Christ's return, and to put it plainly, will be destroyed by him. Along with them, others allied with them will also perish. It's an extremely interesting subject, because if you look at today's politicians, try to answer, which of them truly serves God? Each of them has their supporters and opponents, but is any one of them really waiting joyfully for Christ's return? And will Christ be happy to see any of them? Take a close look. Most of them are just playing roles. There are representatives of various religions here, Muslims, Hindus, probably a few atheists, but you'll also find those who pose as Christians, like Trump or Maloney, or Putin, formerly Orthodox, sometimes presented as a defender of Christian values, although that likely has little to do with reality. It's all just appearances. We also have to remember that there are secrets in the world that these people know more about than we do. A president with a 4-year term might not be privy to everything, but someone like Putin, who has been in power for many years, probably knows the background of matters that ordinary people never get access to. An example? For instance, what's happening in Antarctica? Why can't you travel there freely, even with your own money? Officially, it's to protect nature, even though it's hard to find any life in that wasteland. There are things these politicians could reveal, but they don't. This indicates that they are all part of the same global puzzle and collusion. The most important thing, however, is what the Bible emphasizes. Probably all of these people, without exception, will be destroyed when the end comes. Even those who present themselves as friends of Christ are actually deceiving people. They are not on his side, quite the opposite. They serve darkness. Recently, I came across information that Satanism has been outlawed in Russia. You could go to prison for it, but it's hard to believe that such a law means the country's leaders are truly pious. Appearances, political games. Notice too how Trump is presented. According to some, including me, he's subordinate to Israel. According to others, Trump rules Israel. Both sides have their arguments, and Trump provides arguments for both camps. This creates division, a lack of unity, and constant disputes, as if the atmosphere of discord is being deliberately fueled so we don't unite. Are these politicians we see today actually the last ones? Maybe yes, maybe no. Take a close look at this caricature. Are they really the last rulers? We'll see. We live in end times, but I don't think all of them will live to see the events foretold in the Bible. Some will be replaced by others. The political system changes. People leave their posts. I'm not saying the end of the world will be tomorrow. These politicians weren't chosen by me. I asked artificial intelligence, although I call it anti-intelligence, for a list of the 10 most influential people in the world, and then used its caricature for illustration. I'm also not saying that biblical prophecies will be fulfilled in them. This is not my subjective choice. They simply represent the most influential contemporary leaders. Why are we talking about them? Because in the Bible we find a prophecy about 10 rulers. Some see them as kings, but the word used to refer to them simply means someone who has power. Therefore, it could be a politician, a president, who truly has power. The prophecy states that these 10 rulers will unite together with the beast, which we will discuss later in the article. And when Christ comes, people of the same type as them will be in power. Whether it is them or their successors, it does not change the essence of the matter. I think we can agree on this point. Getting to the point, let's focus today on the number 10. Let's start with the statue that King Nebuchadnezzar dreamed about. You probably know this story. I will not discuss it in detail, but I will remind you that the statue had special feet and toes. What interests us here when considering the issue of the last authority on earth? According to the prophet Daniel, The statue symbolizes successive world kingdoms, from the head down to the feet. At the bottom we have the feet and toes. The prophet Daniel says that a stone cut from the mountain will strike the feet, destroying the entire figure. This is an image of the end of human rule, and even the rule of Satan on earth, because different spiritual beings rule the world, guiding people, and these reigns will end. The 10 toes on the feet are a symbolic end of these kingdoms. The feet, interpreted as the British-American Empire, are made of clay and iron, partly hard, partly brittle. The toes, being an extension of them, also have these features. This suggests that this authority will weaken or coexist with a new form of rule. The toes, that is, the 10 last kings' rulers. The toes, however, are the end of the statue, and the fact that there are 10 of them is not accidental. This is very important for us. In the book of Daniel 2 verse 41 to 42 we read, "That you saw the feet and toes, partly of clay, partly of iron, means that the kingdom will be divided. It will have some of the strength of iron. That you saw iron mixed with miry clay, and the toes of the feet were partly iron, partly of clay. The kingdom will be partly strong, partly fragile." These are very important details. Why is this the case? The verse explains further that you saw iron mixed with miry clay means that they will mingle themselves by human seed but will not hold together, just as iron does not mix with clay. In the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed. Its authority will not pass to any other nation. It will crush and put an end to all these kingdoms, but it itself will endure forever. Why is this so important? Daniel emphasizes that nations will mix, which is a phenomenon we are witnessing. The great harlot from Revelation is a force that strives to mix nations, bringing in foreigners, promoting integration of cultures. An example? In Poland there are more and more Ukrainians, in Western countries, Indians and Muslims. At the same time, extremely foreign cultures are brought in, such as from Africa or Asia, where people have completely different values. Often the United States is held up as a model, which in fact is an artificially created nation of people from various backgrounds. This is an attempt to show that the mixing of nations strengthens the state. Of course, this is a lie. It is exactly the opposite. That is exactly how this prophecy is described in the book of Daniel. They will mingle themselves by human seed. So nations live alongside each other but do not become one. Modern Europe is a perfect example. In one country, side by side, live Indians, Muslims, and representatives of other cultures who in many cities are already taking over power. In the sense that sometimes the prime minister or president becomes someone of foreign origin, not a native Briton, for example. However, even then, the nation as a whole is not united. Notice, there is a lack of deep social unity. The population cannot really unite. They do not form a single, cohesive nation. They are a nation, or rather a mix of nationalities, which at any moment can be a source of conflict. It's similar in the United States. Look, there are Polish or Chinese neighborhoods where people don't use English in their daily lives and speak exclusively in their native language. I have heard from Poles living in the USA that many of them, living in Polish districts, practically never had to use English. This shows that nations, despite attempts to artificially blend them, still do not merge into one. But let's go back to the number 10, because we are gathering information about it. The 10 toes we are talking about symbolize power. Toes as part of the foot represent authority that will rule at the end of times, that is, at the end of the present system, the world of humans or the demonic human world. It can therefore be suggested that these 10 toes are 10 kingdoms that will hold power in the end times. In a moment, we will see that this concept is confirmed both in the book of Daniel and in the book of Revelation. Both the 10 toes and the 10 horns refer to this final configuration of power in the world. At the same time, there is a message here that humans are capable of building mighty systems, symbolized by iron, but they cannot create a truly unified system. They are unable to achieve unity. They can build an empire, they can unite interests, they can even hand power over to a single center, but cannot turn iron and clay into true unity. Humans simply cannot do it, and this is an important point. Now let's move to the prophetic passage from the book of Daniel 7:7. There appears the vision of the beast, an animal with 10 horns. We read, "Then I looked and saw in the night visions, and behold a fourth beast dreadful and terrifying, with extraordinary strength. It had great iron teeth and bronze claws. It devoured and crushed, trampling underfoot what was left. It was different from all the previous beasts, and it had 10 horns. These 10 horns, as we see, are the symbol of the final structure of power, the last kingdoms. Horns of animals symbolize strength, authority, power. Daniel had previously seen 4 different beasts, that is, 4 successive powers, but it is the fourth beast that is the most dangerous, because it has as many as 10 horns, which point to the final arrangement of authority before God's judgment. What happens next? In verse 8 we read, "As I was contemplating the horns, behold, another little horn grew up among them, and 3 of the first horns were pulled out before it. It had eyes like human eyes and a mouth that spoke great things." Notice, a new horn emerges, and 3 of the earlier ones are uprooted. Interpreting these symbols, we notice that the 10 horns symbolize 10 kingdoms. But there is a question whether it is exactly 10, or perhaps a symbolic number signifying fullness, that is, all kingdoms. In any case, from among these kingdoms a new state emerges, a horn that grows ever more powerful, developing, acquiring new territories at the expense of 3 other kingdoms, which are uprooted from the power arrangement. Can you point to a state that has grown in such a way and has taken land from its neighbors? Or is currently at war, taking land and getting bigger and bigger? This state is Israel, which openly declares its intentions to expand its borders. This prophecy in the original spoke about just such a phenomenon. Unfortunately, many preachers and false prophets mislead people, diverting attention from the fact that this little horn from the book of Daniel is actually modern Israel. I call it the false Israel, because the true one would arise only if it were founded by Christ our Lord. Any other power attempting to create Israel without the Messiah is acting against God's plan, trying to anticipate Christ and take his place. Interestingly, many biblical prophecies about the end times and wars on the territory of Palestine are interpreted by some as an attack on Israel. Meanwhile, the reality is that it is Israel, as a political entity, that attacked the innocent Palestinians. In 1948, it became a state through violence, killings, and brutality. Since then, this little horn has systematically grown in power, disregarding everyone. It is very arrogant, as further biblical verses confirm. In Daniel 7:20, we read about 10 horns, one of which is particularly highlighted. And as for the 10 horns on its head, and as for the other one before which, when it grew up, 3 of those fell. This horn had eyes and a mouth, speaking great things, and seemed greater than his companions. This horn, initially small, becomes the most powerful over time. Today we hear more and more often, who is able to fight with them? No one is able. Israel is systematically shattering the strongest countries in the region, like Syria or Iraq. Now they're going after Iran, also threatening Turkey that it will be next. Why? Simply, they want to be the strongest in the Middle East, and in order to do this, they must overthrow the strongest. As the prophecy predicts, they want to be the greatest horn and impose their will on other countries. In reality, under the cover of conflict with Iran, Israel continues killings in Palestinian territories, taking more land and homes from innocent Palestinians. Public opinion is focused on Iran, while at the same time Israel is killing people and expanding its territory, enormous amounts of land in Lebanon. They create the impression that they care about Iran, but what they are truly interested in is grabbing as much land as possible. When, 13 years ago, I first recognized that this small horn is Israel, it was much smaller than it is now. At that time, its imminent collapse was predicted. Kissinger was supposed to have said that in 10 years, Israel would be gone. 10 years have long since passed, and Israel is still there, steadily carrying out its plans. Today, however, contrary to predictions, it is stronger than ever, which aligns exactly with biblical prophecies. You should not trust those who repeat that Israel will soon fall, that it is planning to escape to other countries. This is deceitful thinking. It is others who are fleeing from its growing power, while it consistently takes over more land. Do not be fooled by media manipulation. Bought-out journalists won't tell you about this. All you'll hear from them is, "Look what is happening in Iran. Oh no, Israel got hit. Israel will lose soon." During this time, Israel is still killing and taking over more lands which no one talks about, and the small horn is truly gaining strength. In the book of Daniel 7:25 we read, "He shall speak words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and shall think to change the times and the law, and the saints shall be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time." Looking into the book of Revelation, we see an analogy. There too appears a beast that stands against heaven, blaspheming the saints in chapter 17 of Revelation, just as in Daniel's visions. The beast and the horn are the same symbol, a power opposing God and persecuting the saints. It will blaspheme against the saints of the Most High and will seek to change times. They will probably want to change the calendar, because Jews have their own calendar in which it is now the year 5786. Further similarities include mentions of 3.5 times, where Revelation speaks of 42 months, equal to 3.5 years. There are more such similarities. In a moment I will present more, but you must know that the beast and the little horn are names for the same political entity, Israel. Now we will move to the book of Revelation in search of the number 10, which we've been focused on since the beginning of the article, and prophecies that talk about the same thing but in different words. In Revelation 12:3, it shows us who is being spoken about. "And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his heads 7 diadems." A diadem in those times did not resemble today's crowns. It was more like a band indicating authority. Importantly, the dragon symbolizes the devil, meaning a force opposing God. So why does the dragon have 7 heads? Because throughout history, over almost 6,000 years, there have been 7 heads, the most powerful world empires, over which, according to biblical symbolism, Satan held power. He was their head. He directed them. The 7 heads of the dragon thus symbolize all those powers that are under his control. An interesting aspect is also the fact that the dragon has 10 horns. Although this is not explained directly, we can assume that the 7th or last head of the dragon contains all these horns. This is based on the prophecy stating that from the last world power, 10 kingdoms or states will emerge. It is not clear whether the number 10 should be understood literally or rather symbolically. From this final power, which today is identified with the Anglo-American Empire, being one of Satan's heads, these 10 horns will arise. That is why the number 10 recurs in the symbolism of Revelation. Let us now move on to chapter 13 of the book of Revelation. Here we are no longer dealing with the dragon, but with another beast. It begins with the words, "And I saw a beast coming out of the sea, having 10 horns and 7 heads, and on its horns 10 diadems, and on its heads blasphemous names." These 10 horns are already closely connected to the last rulers on earth, who will appear in the end times. So let us consider, who is this beast? 10 horns, 10 diadems, they clearly allude to kingly or political power. Why does the beast, like the dragon, have 7 heads? To understand this, one must know who the beast is in this symbolism. Spoiler, the beast is Israel, but not the real one, rather, its false image. When God decided that there would no longer be a king on the throne of Israel, Satan devised a plan to have his own representatives ruling that country. How did he do it? The dragon, having 7 heads, symbolized his power over every world power: Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, and ultimately the Anglo-American power. Rome, being one of those heads, suffered a deadly wound when the temple was destroyed in 70 and Israel as a state ceased to exist. This wound was not healed until 1948, when, under the patronage of the Anglo-American power, the state of Israel appeared on the political scene, a man-made creation which Revelation names the beast. Beasts in the symbolism of Revelation are political entities, guided by spiritual forces hostile toward Christ and competing with him. Therefore, when God decided to end the existence of the kingdom of Israel, Satan created his own kingdom, a false Israel, arising under the auspices of successive world powers. For centuries, the heads, world powers, over which Satan had control, allowed the kingdom of Judah or Israel to exist, which was an artificial creation. Interestingly, Orthodox followers of Judaism themselves do not recognize modern Israel as the true kingdom of Judah. Their teaching says that no kingdom of Judah or Israel can arise before the coming of the Messiah. The most zealous, fanatical Jews, followers of Judaism, openly despise modern Israel, burning its flags and considering it the work of Satan, since it is not the work of the Messiah. Thus, Christians who thoughtlessly recognize this state as the chosen people are mistaken. Many Jews who study the Torah clearly proclaim that this is not the true Israel. But there are also those who take advantage of privileges, taxes, social benefits, so they have come to like this Israel. Over time, the beast will grow in strength. Since I have already explained that Israel is in this symbolism, the beast, notice that it is also the little horn. In the prophecy of the statue from Daniel, there is no mention of the beast, but there appears the symbol of 10 toes. However, there is another matter that I will not write about more extensively today, but I will reveal that Gog from Magog is also Israel, which first attacked the Palestinians, and today claims that it will be attacked by Gog. In a sense, this is an inversion of the biblical narrative. Then there appears the figure of the woman, in biblical symbolism portrayed as the great harlot, and also as the great city, Babylon the Great. Let us focus on the symbolism of the great harlot, who sits on the beast. Analyzing the prophecies and descriptions from the book of Revelation, we see that this woman sits not only on the beast, but also on its heads. That is why popular Protestant teachings identifying the great harlot with the Catholic Church make absolutely no sense. Because the Catholic Church did not exist, nor had any influence on ancient Egypt, Babylon, or Greece. On the other hand, religious leaders who turned away from God were present in all these empires, and they wielded influence everywhere. They had a very great influence on all these rulers, and it was they who committed harlotry. The prophets of the Old Testament openly wrote about the leaders of Judaism as harlots, who commit harlotry not only with false gods, but also with false kings, kings who are not their kings. They seek support and protection from the kings of Egypt, Syria, or Babylon, instead of from God. So who is the harlot? It is Judaism, more precisely, its leaders, whom I call the Sanhedrin, which is a more accurate term than a general reference to all Jews. In fact, only a small percentage of today's Israel population are descendants of ancient Israel. It is estimated to be about 7%. The remaining 93% are people whose ancestors adopted Judaism at various points in history, having come from pagan peoples, and whose descendants later considered themselves Israelites. This process is the work of Satan. As for the handful of authentic leaders who maintained influence over the centuries, they are the great harlot, the mother of other harlots. The Bible emphasizes that she is the mother, thus the original source. Therefore, it is impossible for the Catholic Church or other younger religious traditions to be this mother. They are rather her daughters. It is Judaism, and especially its elite leadership, that has, over the centuries, amassed great wealth and influence, mastering the art of gaining power. Even in Roman times, their power was respected and feared, and their influence was nearly omnipresent. Let's remember that the beast is Israel. The 10 horns are the final rulers of the world in the end times, and the great harlot is the leaders of Judaism, the Sanhedrin. The heads of the beast reflect Israel's dependence on other powers. However, biblical prophecies announce that, finally, the beast will become the 8th world power. It will surpass the previous heads and become independent, even stronger than the United States. Just a dozen or so years ago, such claims seemed absurd, but today more and more people are noticing how Israel is gaining greater influence over world politics. It controls U.S. decisions, has excellent intelligence and a network of influence, surpassing even the American and British agencies. Let's move on to the 10 horns. They symbolize 10 kings, leaders of nations, who will appear in the end times. Revelation 17:12 speaks about them. And the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received royal power, but they will receive authority as kings for 1 hour together with the beast. Listen carefully. Currently, the United States still remains a global power, but the last key force on the international stage will be the beast, along with the 10 rulers, who will form a kind of coalition and unite their forces. Although none of these countries individually matches the existing global powers, together, by combining resources and influence, they will become the new number one in the world. Such a scenario is entirely possible. Many may wonder, how could such a small country as Israel become a world power? And yet, despite its size, we can already see that it plays a huge role on the international stage and influences the politics of other countries. Where will the power of this beast come from? We read in Revelation 17:13, they have one purpose, and they give their power and authority to the beast. 10 rulers, that is, 10 states, will make a joint decision to unite and hand over their authority and power to the beast. These states will give it everything: finances, armies, resources, or influence, which the beast will use. This will make the beast even more powerful than before. Currently, support for Israel is mainly political, and some countries express criticism toward it. However, this opposition will disappear over time, and other states will not only stop rebelling, but will actually be willing to fight for Israel. For example, we can imagine that if Poland were ordered to join, the Polish government would probably quickly send our soldiers to that alliance, just as often happens with countries that are obedient to stronger allies. Let's also look at current tensions, for example, between Italian Prime Minister Meloni and Netanyahu. You can notice that, despite their disputes, most countries stick together. I have prepared for you a kind of legend to make it easier to understand biblical symbolism. The little horn mentioned refers to Israel. If you want, you can take a screenshot to remember this. The beast with the wound also represents Israel, which healed and returned to the world map in 1948. The Bible describes that the beast had a mortal wound that was healed, and the return of Israel to the international arena is that very moment. Israel, which previously did not exist, suddenly appeared, began to develop, and grew stronger and stronger, which fits this prophecy perfectly. The 7 heads of the beast, as well as of the dragon, symbolize the 7 most powerful empires in history. Meanwhile, the harlot sitting on the beast, according to this interpretation, is the Sanhedrin, that is, the hidden power that guides nations from behind the scenes, not holding an official status as queen, but wielding immense influence. She is portrayed as a lover of other rulers, symbolizing close, often contradictory alliances. The 10 horns are the final rulers on earth, like the 10 toes from Daniel's statue. The dragon, on the other hand, is Satan. In Revelation 17:16, we again read about the 10 horns and the beast. And the 10 horns you saw and the beast, these will hate the harlot and will make her desolate and naked, and will eat her flesh and burn her with fire. In this symbolism, the harlot is Judaism, or more precisely, the Sanhedrin, currently wielding power. For many, this is a shocking image. How is it possible that the beast, that is, the Jews, would destroy their own system? When I first published this 13 years ago, many didn't believe it. They cooperate with each other. But today, growing tensions are visible. Israel emerged thanks to the support of the great harlot, her money and influence. But this child is becoming ever stronger and less willing to be steered by former guardians. Israel wants to gain full control of the global monetary, banking, and trade system, which up to now has been controlled by the great harlot. To have such influence as she does, it will have to get rid of her. From Satan's point of view, this is not good, because Christ said that a house divided against itself will fall, and it is not in Satan's interest. However, according to Revelation, God himself will push the beast and the alliance of the 10 rulers to destroy this hidden power. Thus, other states will finally reject the rule of the great harlot. It is worth noting here that in the modern world we have already experienced a new form of totalitarianism, the so-called pharmaceutocracy, where power is exercised by large pharmaceutical corporations. This model of government, like communism or fascism, is preparing us for FEMA camps, quarantines, under the guise of caring for the public good, lockdowns, and restricted possibilities. It is just as dangerous as all the other communist or fascist systems that existed, which always proclaimed beautiful slogans and then their crimes came to light. The Bible says clearly, it is God who will inspire the hearts of the 10 rulers to unanimously hand over power to the beast until the prophetic words are fulfilled. all will unite against the hidden power, no longer wanting to be controlled by it. The great harlot exerts pressure on all nations, forcing them into obedience, such as by imposing quarantines or WHO regulations and other institutions associated with the UN. They are meant to seem impersonal, yet at the same time possess immense power over nations, and nobody knows who she is, that she has such power. To sum up, the 10 toes from the book of Daniel chapter 2 point to the final phase of human kingdoms, a mixture of strength and weakness, after which God will establish his eternal kingdom. And this weakness results from the fact that Babylon the great harlot has mixed our nations. The 10 horns from Daniel chapter 7 and from Revelation chapters 12, 13, 17 signify the political power of kings or kingdoms, maybe presidents, connected to the last system opposing God. These are the kingdoms that will exist on the day Christ comes. When this stone breaks loose from the sky and strikes the feet, it will destroy not only the feet, but also the toes that will be at the end. And the 10 kings from Revelation chapter 17, explained as rulers who received power together with the beast, but only for a short time, 3. 5 years, 42 months, as mentioned in the book of Daniel. That is enough to wreak enormous destruction and commit much evil. The beast does not yet have complete power, but is striving to obtain it, waiting for a full union with the 10 rulers. When that happens, another issue will arise. Before they destroy the harlot, the beast and its allies will turn against Christianity. They will fight against the Lamb and his servants, and according to the book of Revelation, the saints will be persecuted and killed, but after 3.5 days they will rise again. Currently, the beast is gradually gaining more and more power and influence in the world. Even in the media, there are reports that 20 U.S. states have signed agreements handing over data on all citizens to Israel to track and combat its enemies worldwide. More and more systems and devices, such as certain phones like Samsung, reportedly have tracking software that cannot be removed. This means everything you say and write is visible to them. For now, their goal is to eliminate Israel's enemies, but in the future, it could serve other purposes. They can monitor everyone, then use it to combat the followers of Christ. Because it is the beast that will wage war against the saints and defeat them. It is not the great harlot, but the beast that will bring about the downfall of the saints. The beast will also introduce a single world monetary system, or even a common religion, for example, through the Noahide laws, we shall see. Whoever does not submit to the new order and does not accept the mark of the beast will not be able to buy or sell. They will be excluded from society. If a single currency system arises, all transactions will be centrally controlled and cash will be banned, so anyone's access to funds can be cut off at any moment. That is why it is worth developing local communities today, where people will support one another and exchange goods and services. Such initiatives could prove invaluable in the future when the global system becomes too oppressive. But unfortunately, the Bible clearly indicates that people in the end times will be divided, not united. That is precisely what these analyzed passages show. Let's summarize once again. The 10 toes from the book of Daniel symbolize the final phase of human kingdoms. The 10 horns and the 10 kings from the book of Revelation are analogous images. Daniel portrays the empire from a human perspective, as a magnificent grand statue. Revelation, on the other hand, depicts it as God sees it, as a wild beast. The greatest illusion of the end times will not be chaos, but an illusory unity. The 10 kingdoms will think in a similar way, but it will not be unity in truth, only unity in surrendering power to the beast. The Bible, when analyzing the passages about the 10 horns, emphasizes that this power will be given under the influence of forces opposed to God. The 10 toes and 10 horns are not just an image of a final political coalition. It is an illustration of the paradox in every civilization distant from God. The closer it gets to global unity, the more clearly its internal fragility becomes visible. Iron and clay may form one shape, but they will never merge into a single coherent organism. The end times, according to Daniel and Revelation, are not so much an era of chaos as an era of artificially created unity. Humanity will reach a certain form of political, military, or civilizational concentration, But since it is not based on God, truth, and the Lamb, it becomes a unity directed against God. 10 toes, 10 horns, 10 kings. This is the image of the fullness of human rule at the end of history. Yet this fullness is not the fullness of the kingdom of God. Rather, it is the culmination of the crisis of human dominion. The kingdom of God is not simply the next kingdom after previous empires. It is a completely different kind of rule, not a larger empire, but a radical change in the logic of power, the end of the reign of rebellious archons. It is not a fiercer beast, but the victory of the Lamb. However, at present, Satan is trying to impersonate the Lamb. I have many videos on my channel on this topic where I reveal the mechanisms Satan uses to deceive even the elect. I encourage you to check them out. Thanks for listening until the end. I would be extremely grateful for likes, shares, and comments because it helps grow the channel, which gives a chance to reach even more people. The full written version of the article is now available at yeshu.blog. There you will also find my videos and music, all created in the name of our Lord Yeshu. If you receive the gift of faith in the name of our Lord Yeshu, take the next step and contact me to be immersed in the name of Yeshu. You can find contact details on our website or simply write on Messenger. Glory to Yeshu.